Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to RCI TV for round 3 of the European Masters. We've travelled from rainy Italy to the lovely sunrise at Belgium with Zolder, and now we've headed all the way down to Spain in southern Europe for Barcelona at round 3. And you might have noticed we got similar lighting conditions to what we had in the second round of the season. We're going in reverse this time around. It's going to be an evening race going into the night. It'll get darker as the evening progresses, and the drivers will have their first proper taste of a night race this season. My name is Ryan Gill, and I will be your lead host for this evening. I have Jake the Bosmeister Boswell behind the cameras, and of course, joining me for the rest of the season, it is Jesse Lee, the one and only Jesse Lee.
Hello, Ryan. Hello, Jake. And hello, everybody out there at RCI TV. Well, round 3 and race number 4. Remember, round 1 had 2 40-minute races. This, of course, is one 80-minute race. And fresh off the tight confines of Zolder, we go to a place where we can, stretch the track limits just a little bit. Barcelona here in Catalonia, Spain. And what an interesting track this is. You love it or you hate it. And certainly a lot of the drivers today were talking about how they didn't necessarily do a ton of practice here. And I suspect a lot of that might be down to the track itself. But one way or another, 80 minutes, a lot of questions to be answered today, Ryan. And of course, a championship still yet to be decided. In fact, nobody yet has even taken control yet.
No, very correct, Jesse. I mean, we are 3 races into the season, and despite the fact that James Parker has 2 wins to his name so far this season, doesn't really have as commanding a lead in the championship as you would think so after taking 2 wins. And obviously he did have that race in, the second round at Imola. First round, second race at Imola. He did struggle and did drop some points, so hasn't really had the consistency over the first three races. But the BMWs, they had the ability to do the whole race on 1 tank of fuel. We weren't entirely sure if they'd be able to do it. The BMWs were convinced they could do it. And that big question you alluded to earlier, Jesse, is going to be, can they do it here at Barcelona? We don't know. I'm not entirely sure if they know. And I'm not entirely sure if our audience at home know, Jesse, but it's going to be an interesting race to see here tonight. Can the BMWs do an entire race on 1 tank of fuel, or will they have to pit like the rest of the cars here tonight? There is one car, though, on the grid at Zolder that if he hadn't got into, should we say, a bit of a scrappy race, may have been able to challenge for the win, and that would have been Killian Ryan was the fastest car on track at Zolder a week ago, and he's looking pretty quick here at Barcelona too.
He sure is, and Killian Ryan needs to have a good race today. In fact, joined by his brother Cormac Ryan here as well. And for Killian anyway, he is on the verge of falling out of championship contention near the halfway point. One good race, though, can change the story very dramatically, and that could be the case today. Talked a little bit about the BMWs being able to make it at Zolder. If you weren't with us a week ago, they did the near impossible and went the entire race without pitting. 80 minutes at Zolder is one thing, 80 minutes around here, quite another. You're on the throttle so much more of the time than you are here. And, of course, this is also a rather large track in comparison. So all these things could factor. I'm with you 100%. I don't think they know if they can make it. I'm sure that they have a general idea, but I'm not sure they know. But one thing we do know is that they will know about 5 seconds before we do, whenever they either have to pit or run out of fuel trying to make it. And running out of fuel is so very detrimental. It's risk versus reward. Do you try it? Do you not try it? We will have to see. Well, before they can try their pit strategy, they're going to have to try their qualifying strategy. 10-minute session. Everybody out on the track. 21 cars in the session currently, and everybody scrambling for space. Shouldn't be too hard here today on a track of this size, but still, it is a fairly large track. You don't want to mess up your laps. If you invalidate a lap here, well, you basically wasted 4 minutes.
Yeah, and well, 2 minutes into the session, Mike Noble comes around the final corner in his BMW, and the 123 FFS Racing BMW will be the first one to go around a lap of the circuit of Barcelona for the qualifying session. So let's jump on board then. Down towards the first corner, Elf Corner, typically named after the fuel company, located quite a few regions of Spain. Then we go through into the big Renault curve, turn 3, very long right-hander, and you can see Mike Noble fighting the wheel, keeping it on the inside as much as he can, then extending on the outside as we come towards the Repsol Bridge and the Repsol corner. Another very long right-hander. You're just waiting to get the throttle down, maximizing the exit. And then towards a left-hander, another one of these corners that feels like it takes an eternity to get through. Maximize the exit. Be careful of track limits on turn 5. Then coming down towards Verth Corner. Make sure you don't invalidate your lap by going too wide on the exit. Mike Noble, I think he has kept it between the white lines, and he has on my timing board. Maximizes the exit of the Cancer corner as well, and onto the back straight. Coming down towards the hairpin now that has, of course, been reprofiled in the real world. We still have the old layout of the circuit here. Then we go into the Bank Sabadell, another one of these very long right-handers, and this is a corner where you're just waiting an eternity to get down on the throttle, maximize the exit, avoid the anti-cut curb on the inside, make your way towards this horrible chicane at the bottom of the circuit, and then out through the final corner, rides the anti-cut curb on the exit for good measure, maximizes the exit of the final corner, run up towards the line, and it's a 143.698 for Mike Noble. 3/10 to the good over the likes of James Parker, but it's immediately beaten by the Pride Tribe's favourite driver. It's Cody Pride, 18 thousandths ahead for provisional pole.
Well, that's an excellent lap by Mike Noble, but just a ever so slightly better lap from Cody Pride. And as you've already mentioned, hello to the Pride Tribe. We know that they're out there watching this evening, cheering on Cody Pride, and love to have you in the stream. And we wish Cody all the best of luck. We hope that you enjoy your time with us here this evening. And for Cody Pride, it is all going the right direction here very early. A 43.680, and dare I say, feel like Pride's going to need to put a little bit extra in the bank if he wants that to stick. Gerardus in the 111 Audi up into third place, a quarter of a second off the overall pace. Here comes Cormac Ryan Meenan. What does Cormac have for us here? And it's going to be what looks like a 11th place lap, so just behind his brother there. Killian in the top 10 only just, and James Parker, your championship leader, now down to 5th place. Schaefer in the 939 has reset to pit lane. He's only going to get one more timed lap out of this run before the end of qualifying. Very compact format indeed, but 5th place for the time being, and 4 minutes and a half to play. Everything to play for here. I feel like everybody at this point has what they have, and you may see one or two more going to the pit lane, but James Parker improves on his time, 43.767, and that puts him about 3/10 off the overall pace. Mike Noble goes to the top of the board, a 43.485, knocking Cody Pride down 2/10 off. Cody Pride went to the pit lane. That's warranted a response from Pride. Now Pride's come back out.
Cody Pride will be coming back out, and he'll have to find 2/10 of a second. Romano Berenic making his way towards the line to see what he can improve on his lap time. Manos Gerardis up into 7th with their latest attempt, and that puts 2 of the Audis into the top 10. Of course, we do have Another Audi further down in 15th place. Here is Bart Matcher, strategist of the race last week. One of the drivers of the day goes 9th, but then is immediately pushed back down to 10th. But I have to say, Bart Matcher probably won't mind starting in 10th place, but I think he'll probably have to improve on that time if he wants to maintain that top 10 starting position. Here's Jarkko Torvinen, who was another driver who had a great performance out at Zolder. He's 8th at the moment, comes up towards the timing line, and he will improve to 7th.
Good lap by Torvinen there. Of course, so many different storylines from a week ago. Folks, if you weren't with us last week, after this race wraps up tonight, do yourself a favor, pop some popcorn and go back and watch Zolder. You will see a bewildered Ryan Gill and Jesse Lee trying to figure out what the strategy is. And James Parker going second, just 1/10 off of Mike Noble's pace. That lap of 43.485. And James Parker has shut it down. He will take no further part in the session. Killian Ryan Meenan up from the halfway into the basement, all the way up into 4th place, 2/10 off the pace. It is starting to get very tight indeed inside the top 10. Cormac still just a little bit off of his brother's pace back in 5th place. Baranek up from the cellar into 6th place. The 66 Porsche, 3/10 off of 43.779, as it's getting very tight indeed here. I think the last car across the line might have a shot to take it.
Could entirely be so. It's very hot out here, 29 degrees ambient, 38 track temperature. Of course, all the qualifying sessions taking place at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. None of the races take place at this time in the day. So it is very, very difficult for a lot of these drivers to judge the qualifying conditions. Of course, the practice server in the week leading up to the race does have the qualifying conditions set up so they can practice it if need be. But if you haven't got any practice in on the week, you will spend quite a bit of your time just trying to get your pressures dialed in for qualifying. And only 10 minutes means that you really do have to get your pressures right, and it does reward those that get that practice in. Cody Pride sitting in 3rd at this point in time. Very impressive performance in the second Imola race in the rain to dominate and get a win for that Audi. We're yet to see a Ferrari on the top step of the podium. Will it be this week that we do see the prancing horse on the top step, or does Cody Pride think that he can put his Audi on pole position to try and take a win here tonight? Well, he's put it on provisional pole by 0.5 over Mike Noble. Mike Noble is up on his lap time, though, comes through the chicane, wide onto the exit, wide through the final corner he comes as well. He's up by 0.1 This is going to be provisional pole for Mike Noble. Steals it back immediately.
He gets another one. Him and Cody Pride both have another lap.
They do both get another lap. Bart Matcher has conceded. That's his qualifying session over. Sitting in 6th place provisionally is a fantastic position for the man who had the best strategy of the race last weekend of the drivers that needed to pit. Here is Schaefer in 13th place, 0.6 seconds off provisional pole, can only improve by 1 place up to 12th. Here is Jarkko Torvinen, one of the last drivers out on the circuit on a valid lap. What is Jarkko Torvinen going to be able to pull out of here from 9th position? Will he go further up? No, he won't. Not an improvement for the Finn. He will start no further up than 9th, and we are still awaiting the arrival of the 3 protagonists for this qualifying session. Mike Noble, Cody.
Mike Noble's done.
And yep, Noble's returned to the pit lane. He's done. He can't beat that time. Cody Pride, he can beat that time. He's a 10th up on his lap at the moment. This would be enough. He needs to preserve it through the final couple of corners. Here he comes through the chicane. Has he found time? He has found some time. Loses slightly on the exit. Coming out to the final corner. This will be provisional pole. This will be pole. And it is by 27 thousandths of a second. And James Parker doesn't quite have a response. He's down on his time. His delta is red. He won't gain 0.3 seconds through the final corner. Is it going to be enough to throw him up onto the front row of the grid? No, abandons the lap, and Cody Pride is your pole sitter for round 3 at Barcelona.
I love the confidence of Cody Pride there. The little extra skid coming to the line, he knew. He must have known that he had it in the bag. He's just going to drive that car back home, is what he's going to do there. He's looking for the exit. He's driving that car home. Folks, if you needed any confirmation that this is going to be a competitive race, how about we take 20 cars all around 1 second of another? Of course, this is the pro split of the European Tour, and, well, they certainly showed us what it means to be a pro. Cody Pride over Noble and Parker, the podium. Killian Ryan Meenan and Cormac, the top 5. Macha, Baranek, Ipik, Torvinen, and Rose, the top 10. And what I'm surprised about Andy Boardman, only qualified 19th. He's inside the top 5 or so in the championship. Actually, I think he's 7th in the championship, but absolutely incredible. Speaking of standings, Ryan, how about we take a look?
Yep, we've got them on display for you here tonight, everyone. So this is how it stands in the championship. James Parker, 178 points. He does lead the championship. He probably has the most comfortable margin of anyone up towards the top of the field. Martin Schumacher, 155, and Mike Noble on 152. They're close in behind. Then Jarkko Torvinen, that impressive performance in round 2 bumped him up to 4th position. Afuk Barber, who was unfortunately not present last week, is also not present this week, so they will remain on 102 points. Killian Ryan Meenan, who, despite qualifying on the front row, did have a bit of a nightmare race last week. He's 6th in the championship on 100 points. Andy Boardman and Mia Rose on 90 and 84 respectively. And then Jones and Gerardis on 71 points apiece to round out the top 10. And funny enough, I believe that we also have another driver on 71 points. It is Olaf Leffer, who is also sitting on 71 points in 11th place. Coming on to the rest of it, Cody Pride, 68 points, obviously didn't take part in last week's race. Unfortunately, had some wheel issues. Then it's Robin Schaefer, Rano Beranek, Paulo Lima, Nico Kumpu, Harry Conway, who was guilt-tripped into the championship, has unfortunately had to sign out.
Who did that again?
The championship. Mia Rose. Jack Young, unfortunately, misses the 2nd race in a row. He should be back for the rest of the championship. Bart Matcher, though, with a solid haul of points last week, has brought himself up to 19th place after missing the first couple of races in round 1. And IPEC rounds out the top 20. Then moving on to the 3rd page, we have Clyde Barney, Atabek Ertan, Mehab Numik, who has unfortunately signed out of the championship as well, Atakan Akar, Sebastian Croau, who I believe has also signed out of the championship. But then we have Matteo Cinotti, Ethan Jenkins, Furkan Ozkan, Cormac Ryan Meenan, and Filip Borovec. And those 2 drivers at the bottom, they're on 0 points. Filip Borovec has missed last week, and he will miss this week. He unfortunately didn't finish both races in round 1, and the same goes for Cormac Ryan Meenan. So both of those on 0 points for, unfortunately, not finishing the races in round 1. And Cormac obviously had to miss last week because he was out at the Saxon Ring doing his MotoGP photography, and some very nice pictures that he took on the Saxon Ring. If you don't follow Cormac on Twitter, I don't know his handle, but if you look up I think it's Cormac GP actually, you will probably find him, and some fantastic MotoGP pictures if you're into the motorcycle side of racing. But we're here for some GT racing here tonight, and the formation lap is underway, and it is, of course, Cody Pride that leads them around for what will be the start of this race.
Well, very talented family, that Ryan Meenan bunch, both talented sim racers, and Cormac an accomplished photographer as well. And, well, it is definitely going to be a race that is decided by a couple of things, all strategy-based. We think, just to set the stage for you, that the BMWs might be able to make it if they're economical on their fuel. We suspect everybody else might have to pit. Now, if the BMWs can,
I'm pretty sure if the BMWs have to pit, everyone else has to pit.
Correct. Well, that is one of the storylines. We're looking to see if BMW has to pit. They didn't last week at Zolder. We were told that they had at least 2 extra laps of fuel at the end of that race, which was remarkable. Of course, it's far more difficult to be economical on your fuel here than it is at Zolder, so we'll see. Cody Pride, speaking of accomplished and talented families, Cody Pride and the Pride Tribe here, of course, as well, getting that pole position. We'll have to see what Mike Noble and James Parker can do on the start. I reckon, we're looking at the points, anybody from 6 on up, from Killian Ryan Meenan on 100 points all the way up, anyone from there can still win this championship. Overcoming a 76-point deficit is difficult, but not impossible. But it all starts right here in this race. If you want to have a shot to win this championship, you have to show it here today. For the likes of Schumacher and Boardman, today could be the day that puts the nail in the coffin for them. But we will have to see. Can the BMWs make it? What will the strategy be? Can Bart Macha do it 2 weeks in a row to the field? We are about to find out. I'm on pins and needles, Ryan. I can't wait to get going.
As we prepare to round the final corner, it's Cody Pride and Mike Noble on the front row of the grid. James Parker and Killian Ryan Meenan in behind. And don't forget Cormac and Bart Matcher in there as well. We've got a great selection of manufacturers on offer from continental Europe here today. And here we go then, 80 minutes of racing is lights out, and it's a poor start for Killian Ryan Meenan. He's dropping back through the pack like a stone, already overtaken by the likes of Cormac and Bart Matcher. Berenic's got passed as well, and I believe even Mia Rose, who was down towards the back end of the top 10, has managed to jump Killian on the start. Awful start for the man who had the most pace out at Zolder, but it's a good start for Cody Pride. Took pole position, maintains the lead through the first couple of corners, and it's a very clean start indeed.
Well, for Killian Ryan Meenan, I can only assume that he started in third gear or something like that. He's not uncommon. He's done that several times before, and he's even actually started a pace lap in reverse once here at RCI, so I'm not saying that's what happened, but that definitely had the looks and the hallmarks of somebody who started off in the wrong gear. It's getting very spirited here. Cormac is absolutely on it, trying to overtake James Parker for the third place position. Couldn't be 2 more different machines, the BMW and the Porsche, but here they are racing very stoutly, and all of a sudden Mike Noble trying to keep pace with Cody Pride.
And remember the strategy from Zolder last week for the BMWs. It was to go on the slowest fuel map that they could without losing absolutely enormous amounts of time over the cars that will be running faster fuel maps, because they know they have to pick. James Parker was a cork in the bottle for almost 30 minutes at Zolder. Very, very different thing to do it around here at Barcelona with the enormous big straight, as it's all getting very, very tight towards the end of the circuit, but still absolutely fantastic racing. And Killian Ryan Meenan, who did drop quite far down the order, he has recovered up to 6th place on the opening lap. He is absolutely on fire, recovering from that poor start. And that, to me, Jesse, kind of sells the fact that Killian is going for the all-out strategy that he wanted to try at Zolder, but just couldn't really enact because of the awful race that he suffered. He's going full beans to the end.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we can say about Killian, he had a pretty difficult race there, got in trouble with the stewards. By the way, live stewarding, of course, on the Monday championship, so they will be looking out for any sort of problems. And certainly he ran afoul of a couple of the stewarding decisions, but even still raced very hard. So everybody here in this field, now that you mention it, will have an idea of what they can do and what strategy works and what doesn't work after coming off of the Zolder race a week ago. So with that knowledge in hand, you are better equipped to deal with this. But like you said, it is obvious there are a lot of cars out here, in my opinion, that are on a pseudo fuel save of some variety. I can guarantee you Killian's not one of them.
James Parker is definitely on a fuel-saving strategy. The Porsche of Cormac Ryan Meaden all over the back of him, and now his brother Killian, he's joining in on the fun as well. The Porsche is not great in a straight line around here. The BMW is very, very good in a straight line. But you can tell just how much that BMW is hampered through the tight and twisty sections. Cormac all over the back of James Parker. And James Parker is on that fuel-saving strategy. He told us post-race that he was going to try it at Barcelona. He's going to try it at Paul Ricard. And unfortunately for Cormac Ryan Meaden, even in the fast fuel map, it's not enough to hold off the Ferrari of his brother. And Killian will go through, and I have to say, Cormac being held up by James Parker for a couple of laps now, I do not think Killian's Ferrari is the same problem as Barmacha.
Oh, that's so sketchy going to the outside like that. It literally, guys, it cuts the grip in half. And you're trying to skid the car around and keep momentum. And I thought Barmacha there, he nearly lost it there. You saw the back of the car wiggle. And for those of you at home wondering, oh, well, Killian and Cormac cut each other brakes because they're brothers. No, they would rather wreck each other than let the other one beat to the other brother. They're very competitive, those two. So that was not an orchestrated pass.
Sibling rivalry.
Yes, indeed. Cormac had definitely did not let Killian by there. He had to fight for that, but fortunately for Killian, he had a faster car in a straight line. Look at him all over the back of James Parker here. Dicing to the inside, to the outside, all the way to the outside of the hard turn here, and he won't be able to hold it right there, and that is bunching them up. Killian or Cormac in the background still there as Killian again gets back on the attack. Well, it's obvious that Killian is not willing to sit behind this BMW, but it's all about finding an avenue. Can he get a toe down the straightaway, I wonder?
That Ferrari will be much, much quicker on the straights than the Porsche behind, and that's where he got so much pace over Cormac and allowed the overtake to happen. He's going to have the slipstream as well. That BMW is enormous, and it's punching a hole straight through the air for Killian. And on that max fuel load, he's going to have a look. He's going to look to the inside, but not quite able to do so. The straight line speed of the BMW, even in the lower fuel map, just able to keep James Parker safe. But when it gets to the more twisty sections, Killian's Ferrari, it's so much more nimble through these corners. It really does close up the gap. And I wouldn't be surprised if Killian's going to be waiting for one of these short straights to make the pounce where the BMW power is not at its finest.
A little bit of a mistake there by Cormac Ryan Meaden and Oskin there in the 37. Oh, there's going to be contact, in fact, further back into the pack. Was that Baranek Macha and IPAC? I think it might have been. As contact there in the hairpin. And the 37 is still backward of Oskin. And we stay with the battle. James Parker here continuing to try and fend off Killian. And by the way, for the Pride Tribe and the Cody Pride fans out there, well, he is absolutely gone. He is nearly 4 seconds to the good. Not in a fuel save mode is that Audi that the BMW clearly is. And could this be a move to the outside? If he hangs here, he might have a shot, though he cannot do that. And already, after only 7 minutes of running, Schaefer has gotten themselves a drive-through penalty for track limits. That is not an RCI stewards decision. That is an ACC track limits decision on the 939 already.
It's easy to pick up track limit warnings around this place. There's plenty of corners where you can invalidate your lap, but here is Killian Ryan Meaden just trying to use the slipstream, trying to use the pace of the Ferrari. He's going to try on the outside. Down at turn 1, this will turn into the inside at turn 2. It's going to be physical out there. And that's going to allow James Parker to just cut back in onto turn 3. Will Killian hold it around the outside? Here comes Cormac to benefit off of the slow pace that Killian is having to take on the wide line down to turn 4. It's still side by side. An entire first sector for these two cars side by side. Killian has to take to the grass and has to defend his position. And James Parker is doing a fantastic job at exactly what he did a week ago. He's being a cork in the bottle. And I tell you what, Killian is absolutely furious right now. He wants to get past James Parker. He sees Mike Noble and Cody Pride disappearing into the distance. And Killian's entire strategy depends on getting past these cars as quick as possible.
I'm not in Killian's stream right now, but actually I don't know if he is streaming. But I can say there's probably some words going on there that we couldn't say in our stream. Is where I was going with that. But if there's anybody in this field that has cork in the bottle practice, it is James Parker, and he's working it to dramatic effect here as well as Killian continues to try and get around. Well, in sectors 3 there is not a lot of room to make that pass. It is pretty much single file, but sectors 1 and 2 you are able to get a pass on, and we'll see if we see the same move again here. Very defensive to the inside was Parker a lap ago. Is Killian close enough this time? I think he might be by the time they get to the breaking point, but not wavering off the racing line as James Parker. And meanwhile, Cody Pride is gone to the tune of 6 seconds out front. Mike Noble now on an island all by himself by virtue of this battle between Parker, Killian, Cormac. And now, of course, you have Baranek and Ipek and Torvinen all in there because, again, you get corked, and then all of a sudden, it all stacks up. Down to the inside, Killian looking to the inside. Does he have it now? He's got to hold tough. Will he be clear? Just the crossover move by Parker. It won't be enough. There's going to be a tap. Will that upset Killian? I don't think it will. And finally, after laps of trying, Killian Ryan Meenan gets the pass done. James Parker, though, would not go down without a fight. Oh, and look at this.
Ipek has taken advantage of this to get past Cormac as well. That Mercedes is absolutely flying around here. He got past Baranek on the lap previous. And now he's got past Cormac Ryan, and now he's going to try and hunt down James Parker as well. But Killian's done exactly what he needed to do. Ipek's gone deep, and that's going to allow Cormac to come back. And the Porsche does go back through, and can Baranek go around the outside as well?
Oh, no!
I think he is going to do it. Is he going to be forced to the outside line? Might have to concede now. 2 into 1 in the chicane doesn't go. What if you've got to concede?
What?
The Porsche will take the position back. Fantastic move by Baranek, and Ipek loses all the progress he'd made in 2 laps time, has to do it all over again.
Can I just say, first and foremost, we're going to dissect that, but I just want to say, absolutely top shelf racing by everybody as Ipek continues to try and have this fight with Baranek. It looks like they will change places once again down into turn 1, a clean pass, but continuing to go wide as Ipek. All I was going to say is how frustrating that had to be for Ipek to make up all those spots and then to lose them all in 1 lap like that. But I digress from that point. Around the outside is Cormac trying to overtake Parker. This could be pay dirt here if he can hold to the inside. They're going to be dead even through the middle of the corner and the hairpin. But the long straight will benefit the BMW, though it does curve in favor of the Porsche here, at least for a quarter or so. Still side by side. Excellent racing continues here inside the top 10. How are they still side by side and they finally work it out? You can consider the position conceded, but only for a moment. Absolutely spectacular driving, cutting down the inside. He's gone deep. He's gone real deep. Another bump, but successful defense. He pulls and parks it in front, and Cormac in front of the 88, or the 888 in fact.
I've spoken so much about Cormac Ryan Venet's incredible ability to defend. Well, you just saw an incredible showcase of the pressure that he can put on as well. James Parker, definitely a cork in the bottle. And now he's got Ipek right on his tail, and the Porsche and Ferrari of Killian Ryan Meenan and Cormac Ryan Meenan have been released. And one of the interesting factors that I'm thinking about here, Jesse, Mike Noble is not lapping anywhere near as slow as James Parker. Is Mike Noble going for a very different strategy to James Parker here today? Is he running a faster fuel map? Is Mike Noble thinking that he has to do a pit stop anyway, so he might as well go full beans from the start? I don't think it is probably full beans, because if it was, he wouldn't be 9 seconds down on Cody Pride. At least I'd hope not. But Cody Pride looking absolutely imperious around here at the moment, ruling over the Spanish kingdom at this point in time, and IPEC might be about to rule over James Parker's 5th place in just a moment, but the BMW holds strong. And my word, James Parker, it's almost a rinse repeat of last week at Zolder. The only difference is now he's not leading the race.
Yes, indeed. And back to your point about Mike Noble, if I had to hazard a guess based on his lap times, I think he's thinking about a splash and go on a pit stop. Keep in mind, folks, no mandatory pit stop, but the distance of the race, 80 minutes, would suggest that nearly everybody will have to come in for fuel at some time. Tires won't necessarily be a problem for most people, but fuel will usually. And we talk about the BMWs because they're one of the only cars that we reckon it is even plausible that they could make it. And I agree with you, Ryan. I think Noble and Parker are on two very different strategies. I know Noble probably has a notebook of what his car can and can't do, and I don't know if he has a strategy for an 80-minute race. We've talked about that the last 2 weeks, how strange of a length an 80-minute race is. It's kind of the reason RCI did an 80-minute race, is because it makes the drivers think. And what an absolute treat, as sideways there was James Parker there for a second. I think he's going to give up that position to IPEC, and look at this. Killian Ryan Meenan has run down Mike Noble. Now, will Mike Noble defend this position?
It's going to be interesting to see here how long does Killian take to get past James Parker. We know James Parker's defensive abilities are probably some of the best within ACC, and especially having to do that on a fuel-saving map as well is incredibly difficult, but he did keep Killian behind him, who is definitely on a fast map for a considerable amount of time, but that hasn't stopped Killian from closing down on Mike Noble. And just to put it into perspective, Killian Ryan Meenan is lapping 1.3 seconds a lap faster than Mike Noble on the previous lap. That's the pace difference right now between them. And if you wanted to know what James Parker is doing, James Parker is another 1.7 seconds down on what Mike Noble is doing. James Parker is almost 3 seconds off the pace of the leaders at this stage in the race. That's why he's such a cork in the bottle. That's why there's a massive pack up behind him, and that's why Killian Ryan Meenan and Cormac are both pulling away so quickly. It's because James Parker, he really is maximizing his fuel saving at this stage in the race. He's not too bothered about what everyone else is doing. He's only bothered about what he's doing, and he doesn't really care about moving over for everyone else. He wants to waste their time. That's part of his strategy.
Folks, pit delta here at a minimum is about 50 seconds. It could be 49, but we'll call it 50 for driver error reasons. 50 seconds. So if James Parker is looking to make it to the end without pitting, he has to at least stay within 50 seconds of leader Cody Pride. It's likely more than that. He likely can, you can usually count it out to about a minute to a minute 10, I would say, would be a fair assumption. But at minimum, he knows if he is within 50 seconds, he has a shot, as providing he can make it, he has a shot to win this race without pitting, and he has to make it. But that's the simple math. 50 seconds at minimum. It could be as high as a minute 10. We will have to see and find out. This has been absolutely brilliant racing. Brilliant racing, excellent strategy. Welcome to RCI, by the way, if you haven't been here before. Like, subscribe, hit the bell and all that. We do this pretty much every week, at least a few times. And we would absolutely love to have you. And we hope that you're enjoying today's race as much as we are. Ryan and I are as giddy as can be.
Interesting you mentioned that 50-second timer. Of course, we can see that because of Bart Matcher and Andy Boardman's pit stops that they have had to do. 50 seconds for Bart Matcher, 49.5 seconds for Andy Boardman. Interestingly enough, though, Cody Pride has an 18-second lead on James Parker already. and we're not even 20 minutes into the race. So if he can keep this pace up, Cody Pride will make up 50 seconds on James Parker fairly easily. In fact, he'll probably do it with about half an hour to spare in the race at this pace. That does entirely depend on James Parker continuing to go as slow as he is. That also depends on Cody Pride not making mistakes and managing to keep up this hot lap pace that he's doing right now. But the reality of the situation is, at this stage in the race, it's going in Cody Pride's favour. The full beam strategy for the Audi is working, and Kilian Raikkonen has cleared Mike Noble. He's 11.6 seconds down on Cody Pride, but he's now got clear air. He's lapping around the same pace as Cody Pride. So he's now going to look to try and build that 50-second gap that he needs over James Parker. And if the pace stays the way it is, I've said it before, it's looking pretty likely that the fast map and full go-for-it strategy is definitely in their favour at this stage of the race. It may still change, and James Parker. There's been a collision between himself and IPEC, and that's not going to help James Parker's strategy at all. That's wasted a bunch of time. Here we go. Down into the hairpin, and IPEC just too eager on the throttle. Taps the back of the BMW, and that allows a host of cars to go through. IPEC doesn't gain the position, but James Parker definitely loses plenty of places, and he loses precious time that he needed to retain to make that strategy work.
Not a brilliant moment for IPEC there. James Parker will be livid as well. Right, I'm about to go long form. If anything interesting happens as I look away, please do interrupt me. Of course, we do have live stewards, and some penalties have come through, but there's been a lot of racing incidents more than that. But here they are. Lap 1, warning for the 24 for pushing the 696 onto the curb. Racing incident between the 100 and the 24. Racing incident between the 308 and the 22. Warning for the 696, missing his braking point and contacting the 256. 5-second penalty for car 111, dive bomb and forceful overtake on the 939. Racing incident between the 888 and the 231. Racing incident between the 888 and the 231 on the subsequent lap. Those two incidents happened on lap 5 and 6. No further action between the 888 and the 5. 15-second penalty for the 66. Dive bomb taking out the 37, who then hits the 404. Warning for car 24, and no further action between the 111 and the 404. And that's all the ones that we have as of yet. So the 15-second penalty for the 66, and a 5-second penalty for the 111.
Quite a few incidents to go through in the early stage of this race, but good to know there's only been a couple of penalties coming out, and the stewards, very similar to Zolder last week, just kind of letting people race when it is very small incidents that don't really need punishing, when the most is that you can give a warning, and sometimes a warning isn't really just, so they won't really give one. And just allowing these guys to go a bit door to door. Of course, if it becomes excessive, the stewards do have the ability to punish people, and they do punish people quite severely. In fact, we saw Kilian pick up a drive-through penalty last week for taking out Mike Noble at turn 2 on the very first lap, and IPEC has received a 15-second penalty from the stewards. I'm willing to bet that's for the collision with James Parker at the hairpin more than anything else. I will give you an update. In fact, we have just received that from Stephen DeVust. Lap 11, turn 12, 888 and 224. 15-second penalty for 224 takes out the 888. Now, I'm guessing 15-second penalty, although he didn't claim the position, I'm guessing the 15-second penalty is probably for the amount of time and places lost by James Parker. He did lose about 3 or 4 places, wasn't it? And he's now down in 8th place and has Mia Rose on his back. So, unfortunate for James Parker, lost some time. He was 18 seconds behind the leader the last time we checked. I will have to verify again, see how far back he is from Cody Pride now, but there's one thing for sure, Jesse, that incident has not helped his plan.
Yeah, and the worst part about that is he can't change his strategy, James Parker. He has to live with this. He's made his bed. He can't just decide to bail out because he's already lost so much time. If he bails out, he's just going to end up in the mid-pack anyway. So it doesn't matter. He has to keep on it, and it's just not gone well. I will say, this is not brilliant for Parker, but it is going to completely shake up this championship as Torvinen here fighting with the likes of Gerardus for the 6th place position. Torvinen holding on to that only just. And Mike Noble, of course, only just holding on to 3rd place with Cormac Ryan Meenan trying to get through. Look at the moves. Cormac slicing and dicing in that red and white Porsche, trying to get the position from him. Nothing doing. And that's one of the unfortunate things about the Porsche is, of course, you have the grip and the turn in the corners, but at the end of every corner, there's a straightaway, and the BMW absolutely gobbles up straightaways. So that's a bit unfortunate. But going back to the steward conversation that we're talking about with the steward decisions, I will always be a fan and applaud a stewarding team that allows racers to race. Now, when it goes too far and people's races are genuinely impacted, obviously penalties are warranted. I hate over stringent stewarding, and I think RCI Stewards does a great job of that, of walking that very delicate balance between the two of them. And there was a lot of contact there, I think we can all agree, between that pack and the top 5 when they were going for position. You'll notice, folks, every single one of those was recorded as a racing incident or no further action, and I applaud that.
I did check the deficit between James Parker and Cody Pride, and it now sits about 26 seconds, so just over half of what Cody Pride needs, essentially, to have a pit stop over James Parker. And with, well, just under 55 minutes of the race to go, a betting man would have Cody Pride very much on their side of the odds table, and we'll have to see if that can change throughout here. I don't think James Parker will have changed his strategy. Like you said, he's committed to it now. As soon as you've taken whatever it is that car can take on board, is it 125 litres, I believe the BMW can take, you're committed to that now. You could switch the car into the fast man, but like you said, you're not going to get much further up than maybe 5th or 4th place, and James Parker is aiming for at least the podium here today. And a change of strategy now is not going to give him that. He's wasted too much time. The likes of Cody Pride, Killian Reinminen and Mike Noble are way too far ahead if James Parker did decide to switch to the fuel stop strategy now. So unfortunately, the championship leader down in 8th place and on the back foot a bit now.
Yeah, huge championship implications here for this race. I talked about the top 6 all being in it. What we didn't talk about is side by side in the background there. I think that's Borovic and that's Rose and Borovic there. As I believe, the 22 has gotten through there. Look at this move down into the chicane that Ryan Gill hates so much. A little bit of contact there. I don't know if the stewards will mind that too much, simply because I felt like the position was yielded
well, Mia
anyway.
Rose minded it.
Mia Rose. Mia Rose is going to mind something a bit more there, getting sideways. Now, was that contact with Leffe, or was that just a very loose race car?
That was definitely contact. You're going to see it here. She's trying to retake the place from Borovic using the pace of the BMW. Can't quite do it. Gets a bit out of shape.
Oh, yeah, indeed.
Definitely contact. And Leffe loses the place as well, so that's worked against Leffe, because he's lost the place to Marnie, and now
more contact.
Take the place from Mia Rose as well, and Mia Rose losing more position. She's definitely not happy.
I wouldn't be either, because now not only are you going backwards, you're you're getting your car beat on, and that's not something you want. As we're back up for third place, the pass being made here as Cormac gets through for third place. That was about 15 minutes in the making for Cormac Ryan Meenan, but he's done it. Up to third place, clearly not on fuel saving, is the 5. I don't think any of the Porsches are, mind you. I don't think they have much of a choice, so I think they're all going for it. Mike Noble did his best on what we can only assume is a semi-save of fuel, and position, though, to Ryan Meenan's on the podium as it currently stands.
Looking further down the field, obviously seeing that Bart Matcher and Andy Boardman pitted on lap 7 and lap 5 respectively. They're obviously going for the strategy that Bart Matcher employed out at Zolder. James Parker's going to be the cork in the bottle again. And they wanted to pit early, get out of traffic and have some clear air. That's what they have right now. They're entirely on their own as they go around the circuit, and they're going to be hoping, or they would have been hoping, that James Parker would be holding everyone up again. It hasn't quite worked out that way. So it'll be interesting to see how that strategy of pitting early works for them this time around. They will have gained some time by pitting early, definitely, over the drivers that were getting held up by James Parker. But it's not going to be the same as it was out in Zolder when James Parker was cork in the bottle for about 20-25 minutes right at the front, and he was holding everyone up, and Olaf Leffer is going to make the place on Mia Rose. Mia Rose going backwards now, and a familiar foe now in her rearview mirrors. Martin Schumacher, who has not had a very good race so far, struggled in qualifying, has struggled so far in the race, but he has made up some places. He's in 13th place, and now looking to take 12th off of his fellow BMW driver. And meanwhile, out in front, well, we've barely seen this man all race.
I was just going to say.
Because he's done the best job of anyone out here on the field at extending the gap. He's extended the gap from Killian Ryan, and it's not gone up by a great deal, only about 0.8 of a second within the last 15 minutes. So there's not a great deal of difference in pace between Cody Pride, but he is still extending the gap, and he is still looking very, very comfortable. New wheel for that man here today.
Yeah, brand new wheel after the wheel failure from a week ago. We documented that at Zolder. And new wheel for Cody Pride. So certainly, they said new wheel, the family, the Pride Tribe. So I wonder if it's a different brand or perhaps an updated model. Certainly, usually you take those opportunities to upgrade. You wouldn't usually make a lateral move, but I know a lot of these esports caliber drivers, they will on purpose seek out very specific rims or wheels. I know a particular iRacing champion who for years would buy nothing but a very specific wheel, and it was outdated, it was antiquated, and it was basically ancient technology, but that wasn't important. It was what he was comfortable with. So I'm curious just what Cody Pride ended up with. Whatever it is, it's bad fast, just like his race car today. So for those of you with the benefit of flash photography, get a picture of the one car there because we've not seen a lot of them because he is so far out in front. Well, the battles in the back, though, aren't going anywhere. I don't know what else we could have expected from qualifying being so close. Had the better part of 20 drivers all within 1 second, and they've certainly shown that here. Mia Rose, the Jean Alesi Esports Academy driver, has been, mugged, I should say, a little bit in the past couple of laps, all the way down into 12th now. Certainly a little bit steaming under the helmet, I would imagine. Ryan Gill, I'm sure it's happened to you at some point in your career. How do you get your temper back in control and focus back up after something like that?
It's pretty difficult. I mean, especially if you're on your own. If you're in a team, it's a lot easier. You can have people talk to you. You can have people calm you down. They can, refocus you on the objective. If you're on your own, it's a whole different challenge, and you kind of just have to think of the long game, and that's a very hard thing to do in the moment, in the present, when everything's going against you and you're mad as all hell as to what's going on around you. But, you know, I mean, look, Mia Rose is she's the, I think it was SRO Asia race winner for the SRO Esports. So, you know, she's got what it takes. She has the composure. She knows what to do. She's more than likely been in this situation before. And, you know, she's trying to refocus herself. Does seem to have regained her groove a bit. Not leading time as she was when she got overtaken by Borovic, Barney and Leffer in such a short period of time. And now just focusing on defending from Martin Schumacher. But it is difficult, and it's definitely something that you would say the less experienced drivers would definitely struggle more with, because obviously if you're new to sim racing, the mental side of it, very much like the real world of racing, it is very, very strong. And that's not to say the physical side isn't important. Anyone will tell you that the physical side of sim racing is quite important. But it's definitely a mentality thing. If you have the right mentality, if you're comfortable and you know, your head's in the right place, it's quite easy to start finding time.
Well, she's not where she wants to be, but she looks settled now as she is battling Schumacher there. Member of the chat pointing out about Banny in the 85, qualified 20th, and is now up inside the top 10, has moved up half the field, and a lot of that, you have to say, they have benefited by watching everybody else battle and themselves being able to find their way through the accidents, pick up the pieces, and the pace is there. They're not that far behind Borovic and Parker in the lots. So the pace is there for Banny, and what an amazing run they're having this particular week, getting up halfway through the field, and I don't think they're done. I reckon they could get more. So well pointed out by J-Bot there in the chat.
Also, Darren Pride letting us know that the Cody Pride has got a Simicube wheel now, and was using a Club Sport Fanatec before. So definitely a significant upgrade for Cody Pride. Moving over to the
that's just cheating at that.
Moving over to the direct drive wheel bases, which I believe a lot more people are going to be moving over to direct drives within the next year or so. Of course, with Fanatec's big announcement of the CSL DD, which, you know, there's been some very positive first impressions from a lot of the, you know, sim racing content creators. It's definitely something to get excited for, and of course, we're partnered with Fanatec as well. We've got an affiliate partnership with them at this point in time. We'll have a link available for all of you guys soon. And in fact, you know what I was told, Jesse?
Go on.
I was told that at some point this year, we might be given a CSL DD to give away if stock is looking good.
I'm going to have to hit you with a praying hands emoji on that one, I think. That's incredible stuff. By the way, I was just thinking about Fanatec for a moment. Is there any other sim racing company that makes a racing wheel that you can use on your sim rig that you can also use in a real race car? I think Fanatec's the only people that do that.
I think they are the only ones to do that, and they do it for 2 cars now, by the way, if you didn't see the announcement. Obviously, they have the new BMW M4 GT3 wheel, and they've also got it now for that brand new Bentley Continental, which is going to go up Pikes Peak.
Absolutely mental, that wheel.
It looks amazing, and it's got a very radical wheel design as well. Very, very creative. But the battle's going on whilst we talk about Fanatec and Simicube wheels, and Jesse and I also get reminded about how the fact that we don't have some of sim racing's highest end equipment. But we'll be working towards that end at some point in the future, don't you worry. Maybe you'll see Jesse Lee and Ryan Gill out in a team in an RCI race at some point in the future. But right now, we're stuck in the commentary box, and, well, it's a pretty good place to be at this point in time, because we have Romano Berenick and Mike Noble about to go toe-to-toe for 4th place.
Yes, indeed. Berenick here trying to get this position. Keep in mind, Berenick has that 15-second penalty. Mike Noble will not necessarily care that Baranek wants to get by, knowing that he has a 15-second penalty. The question is, will Mike Noble fight him, or will he just allow it to happen? I reckon he will give him a good fight. Meanwhile, the battle up front, well, the lack of the battle up front, I should say, Cody Pride still holds almost the same lead as he did about 8 minutes ago. It's 12.4. It was 12.3 then, now it's 12.4. So that gap has absolutely stabilized between the top two. Cormac is 10 seconds behind in third. And of course, this is the battle for fourth. The FFS Racing 123 BMW, the rear bumper looking back at the 66 Porsche of Baranek. And what a run Baranek's having here, of course, with the penalty that is going to sort of deflate them ever so slightly, but that will not deter them from this fight right here. And, well, seems my assumption was mostly correct. Mike Noble is not even paying attention to Baranek right now.
No, Mike Noble's running his own race, and here we go. We have Killian Ryan Meenan in the pit lane to serve his fuel stop that he's going to be doing in the race, and this will give us a very, very good idea of where he is going to come out and how much time he has to make up on the likes of James Parker. James Parker is coming into turn 1 right now, and Killian Ryan Meenan still in the pit lane and actually still stationary. This is a bit more fuel than I think I would have expected from Killian Ryan Meenan, unless there's an issue on that car. And he is spending quite a bit of time in the pit lane. We'll have to see. Car rolling again. Gerardis is also in the pit lane, by the way. And with Killian rolling, coming out of the pit lane now, he will get himself back up to racing speed, and we'll have to see where he is. He's actually going to come out behind Bart Matcher. So Bart Matcher's early pit stop has played very well into his hands again. Bart Matcher, I mean, he's head strategist for Connection Lost Racing. There's a reason why. And that early pit stop has managed to allow him to jump Killian Ryan Meenan. I don't think it's going to stay that way for long, because Killian Ryan Meenan is still going to be on that fast to the end strategy. But Killian pitting halfway through the race. Very, very interesting.
Well, we also saw Romano Baranek getting by Mike Noble there. Very, very difficult move there around the outside, but makes it stick, gets the pass done, and I don't think Noble fought him too awfully hard for that, knowing that he's probably going to get that position back sometime in the next 40 minutes or so. And here comes Killian's brother, Cormac, racing for the Cormac GP, which, as you said, I believe is his Instagram handle, coming into the pit lane, getting their service taken care of. What did you see there, Ryan?
So Killian Ryan Meenan, 1 minute 12 seconds he was in the pit lane. So that's pit in to pit out. Bart Matcher, only 50 seconds. So Bart Matcher gained a load of time. And I think Bart Matcher is definitely on a fuel efficient strategy. Cody Pride is in. The race leader comes back in. Now he's got to make hay, as they say, because he's got to try and regain the lead of this race. His targets are going to be the BMWs, because he knows they're the cars most likely to get to the end of this race without stopping. So they're the cars that he's going to be targeting. He was about 36 seconds, I think, give or take, ahead of the likes of James Parker.
Well, and here we have some more fighting here as Killian gets by Matcha, and though he may have cycled out behind him, back in front of him now. Some more housekeeping to do. There was a warning given to the 85 for an aggressive overtake. Racing incident between the 909 and the 22. A warning for car 909, poor car control, impeding another car that was 308. 5-second penalty for car 85, forceful overtake on the 909, and racing incident for 2 minor contacts with the 308. Now you're up to date on that. No more actual penalties being handed out other than the 5 seconds for the 85.
So Cody Pride as well, 1 minute 15 seconds, so 75-second pit stop for him. So he's obviously taken on a lot more fuel. We know that obviously pitting at the halfway point of the race, they will have to refuel more than if they were just going for a splash and dash. And I'm not sure about that, Jesse. I would have thought the splash and dash strategy would be the better option. You know, take the short-term pain at the start of the race, you know, on a higher fuel load, and then just do that little splash and dash. You're stationary for a much smaller period of time. But Killian, Ryan Meenan and Cody Pride, they clearly think differently, and they're the esports level drivers. So, you know, they probably know a lot more about what's going on in their car than we do, and they clearly think that that's the right strategy. And the fact that, you know, it wasn't just Killian, it was Cormac as well, and it was Cody Pride all at the same time, leads me to believe that those three probably have a solid understanding of what their car can do on a half load of fuel and a full load of fuel, and they've decided to go for that half fuel strategy. We'll have to see how it all works out. 36 minutes to go. It's going to get interesting.
Yeah, they've probably worked it out. The Pride, Ryan Meenan, and even Bart Macha. Well, Bart Macha's on a different strategy, but the Ryan Meenans and Pride probably figured that out, that they would rather bet on themselves to go full fuel and knock out lap times and have a very quick pace. Probably just erred on the side of caution on that. Fueled the car, made sure they had enough. Meanwhile, Bart Macha just doing the same thing they did last week, where Bart Macha betting on his strategy numbers being correct and knowing that no matter where he finishes, it'll likely be a net gain. Even though Killian did get by him, he's still looking like he's going to be third on the road. With Cormac, a lot of work to do to get up there and catch him. And some of you at home may be wondering, you're talking about racing for the win. They're back in 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th. Yes, we know that. We expect a lot of these other teams to have to pit. The question is, how long will they have to stop? Ryan, you reckon that they know something we don't. I feel like you're onto something, but I also feel like one of these drivers up front is going to try that splash and dash that we expected to see out of the likes of Cody Pride in the lot. Somebody's going to try that, and that might create a situation where Pride, Killian, and the rest have to actually race their way back up through the field, even though they have better pace. That shouldn't be a too tall task, but I don't know about you, but I've always valued track position over, strategy most of the days. Well, most of my strategy is track position, now that I think about it.
Yeah, I have to say, I definitely would have preferred the splash and dash strategy, but, you know, it's interesting, isn't it? We don't know.
Very excited.
We don't know what these guys are up to, and Killian said last week he was confident that if he hadn't got his drive-through penalty, he could have beaten James Parker on the full go-for-it strategy. Now, obviously, here at Barcelona, where it's much harder for James Parker to defend, and we've seen that. Does Killian still have that faith? Clearly so, and he's able to execute it now. Obviously, he did get held up earlier, and that has kind of worked against him. But then James Parker obviously lost time with the collision with iPad. So there's been ebbs and flows to who's had the advantage so far, but the big one to look at is definitely going to be Cody Pride. He was at the front, he was leading the race for 40 minutes, dominant performance. Now he's back in 11th because he's pitted, but there's 4 cars ahead of him that are going to concern him. They're the only 4 cars in this race that matter in Cody Pride's mind, and that is Mike Noble, James Parker, Mia Rose, and Martin Schumacher. They're the only 4 cars on the grid that we believe could go 80 minutes. I have my doubts. Jesse has his doubts. And I'm pretty sure there's plenty of people at home that have their doubts as well as to whether they can do 80 minutes. And this is not helping Cody Pride now, though. He's stuck behind Jones, who doesn't have to move over for him. Of course, this is a fight for position. And this is losing Cody Pride some time, but Jones does eventually concede, decides better of it, and Cody Pride will say thank you very much, and up into the top 10. I'm going to see if I can try and figure out what the gap is between James Parker and Cody Pride, see how much he needs to make up.
So what you just saw there, by the way, that's not Mike Jones, that's Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones doesn't slap, but that is Mr. Jones, not Mike Jones. And I will tell you what you just saw Cody Pride do. He's not an elderly individual going to the village to get more yarn. He put his four-ways on in sort of gratitude to Mr. Jones in the 100 for letting him go. He very clearly saw that he pulled over, let him go in the hard left-hander. So he put his four-ways on. That's just one way that drivers can communicate. And I'm sure Jones, first of all, very respectful. Jones didn't have to do that, like Ryan Gill said. He could have fought for that top 10 position as hard as he wanted to. Jones decided, it's not worth it. I'm on my strategy. He's on his. Let him go. And Pride, appreciative that he didn't hold him up any longer, flipped the four-ways on for a brief second, thanking him for such. And I love to see it. There's been some shunts today, but there's been a ton of respectful driving. I love to see that. I love to see the top of the top go at it and do it in a respectful manner, because most of the time, I don't know if you've seen a competitor or competitive sim racing a lot of other places, but they get a bit scrappy, and they sort of lose their minds some of the time. A lot of commentators have to apologize for the driving that's going on the track. Not so here.
We've had to do that once.
To be fair, we have had to do that, but I'm saying today, not one of those cases. Excellent driving indeed. And for Cody Pride, he will set his sights nearly 8.5 seconds up the road at Paulo Lima for 9th place. Meanwhile, the man that we're all confused about, that we're trying to figure out if he has the right strategy or not, James Parker in the 4th place position. We assume on a full fuel save, the same as last week, but a very different track, and we're wondering if he can make it to the end. I'm sure he's wondering if he can make it to the end. We documented earlier that Mike Noble is on some sort of fuel save in 2nd place, but is not as severe as the 888. So will it be a splash and dash for the 123 driver? And what about Baranek in the 66? We cannot not mention he is leading this race, the 66. He does have a 15-second penalty. What are all of these teams going to do? Final 30 minutes, twilight here. The lights are going, well, the lights are coming on, but the light in the sky is going out, nearly 9 p.m. Track has dramatically cooled and will continue to likely do so. Oh dear, there's just so much going on. There's 3 or 4 different strategies. We didn't even talk about Bart Mach in the 404, who pitted very early, the same thing he did a week ago. What on earth could he possibly be up to? I don't know. We're going to have to find out. But keep an eye on James Parker. This will tell us a lot about who we think has a shot to win this race. And by the way, going back to Killian Ryan Meenan for a moment, he has not got by Mr. Jones yet, but whenever they cycled back out on pit stops, he had mysteriously made up 2.5 seconds to Killian, but I think he's started to lose a bit of that time now.
I've just been essentially doing your job, Jesse. I've been running the numbers, doing...
Have you?
I have. I've got the calculator out and all. It's fantastic, this calculator. We should take it everywhere.
Mine only does addition and subtraction.
Oh. Well,
yeah.
Anyway, allow me to...
What's the check mark mean?
Allow me to enlighten you to what is currently going on lap time wise. So, Cody Pride, this calculation was also done a couple of laps ago, was 24 seconds behind James Parker. Now, in that time, he has closed down considerably. He was about 9 seconds behind Paulo Lima. That gap is now under 5 seconds as he closes it to 4.5. Just to let you know, James Parker is doing a 1:45.9. That was his previous lap. It was a valid lap, so we can roughly take a look and say that that is his pace. It's actually only a couple of tenths slower than the likes of Jarkko Torvinen and Mike Noble. So that probably roughly is James Parker's pace, because he is a bit down on Mike Noble at this point in time. 1:45.9. Cody Pride is going 2.3 seconds faster.
I was going to say, I can do a
45.
That's impressive.
He's doing 2.3 to 2.5 seconds a lap quicker than James Parker. Now, let's say 2.5 seconds a lap, just to make it easy. In the space of 27 minutes, 2.5 seconds a lap, he's going to close what is now a sub 20-second gap very quickly.
Yes. I see where you're going with that, and in sort of a display of opposite day tendencies here, Ryan Gill's the one that's done the math. I see where you're going with that. Okay. So
switching it up.
So you're telling me James Parker doesn't have a chance?
I'm not saying he doesn't have a chance, because obviously Cody Pride, to use the famous quote, it's one thing to catch, it's another thing to pass. Although you would think someone going 2.5 seconds a lap quicker would have a relatively easy time getting past someone. And
speaking of that,
Killian getting past Mr. Jones.
Only just.
Paulo Lima's received a 5-second penalty. I've just seen Killian on the inside. Ooh, little bit of a snap. Having to take some of the escape road. Was already ahead of Mr. Jones, so I don't think it's good to really look into that.
Killian, of course, doing that to make sure, because if you try to get back on the track very quickly there, as we see Macha, if you try to get back on the road too quickly there in the switchback S's, that is turns 1, 2, and 3, you usually run back into the car that you're racing, and he took that to protect Mr. Jones, I think.
Just had a notification from Phil Roberts, one of our live stewards here today, that the 5-second penalty for the number 24 was for cumulative warnings for Paulo Lima. So,
yes.
That's one of those cases we talked about earlier where, having a bit of paint scraping and banging doors is okay within moderation, as long as it's not too bad. But as soon as it starts getting excessive, as soon as it starts happening way too often, it will get punished. And Paulo Lima has received a 5-second penalty for cumulative warnings. And, not long after he receives that 5-second penalty, he's also going to get demoted down to 10th place, because the flying Audi of Cody Pride is flying in the direction towards his second win of the season, and he's not going to let anything get in his way. And there's a BMW up ahead of him. This is the first of the 4 BMWs that would have been in his list of concerns, and, Mia Rose isn't too far up the road either, so if he can dispatch these two fairly quickly, that's going to open it up really nicely for him to close down on James Parker, who's not that far up the road.
Yes, indeed. Well, Cody Pride just doing an excellent job here. Oh no! Just as I say that, Cody Pride overshoots and hits the dirt. This is going to lose them a... Oh my goodness. It's going to lose him a bunch of time. And also, that is going to bring Killian back into the picture as at least a position or so lost.
5 seconds.
And there is Killian Ryan Meenan in the background just as Cody Pride exits the straight. Killian enters the straight. He will now see Cody Pride again and wonder what in the world happened, because he wouldn't have seen it, but he will now know that he is closer. But now, all that to do again, get by Paulo Lima, get by Martin Schumacher again. Oh, now, a normal human being, that would shake your confidence. For Cody Pride, that just means he's going to go 10th quicker.
Yeah, Cody Pride's going to go quicker and quicker, and he wants to show that his strategy was the right strategy. He wants to assert that over the BMW and assert himself into 9th place.
Absolutely sent it there. Wasn't taking no for an answer.
No, definitely. And he does have to get a move on. 3.5 seconds is what he lost on that previous lap. James Parker, though, did also have He had a 1:46.0. So James Parker, like I said, low 46s, high 45s. That's the pace that he's able to do at this point in time. Same for Mike Noble and Jarkko Torvinen, actually. Romano Berenik ahead of them is doing low 45s. And he is pulling away, but he's got a 15-second penalty for his troubles. And of course, we know that the Porsches have to stop. There's no way that the Porsches can go 80 minutes at any circuit. It's just unfortunately not possible with the configuration that the Porsche has. So we'll expect to see Romano Berenik in, but I imagine very much like Jarkko Torvinen, Philip Borovec and Olaf Leffer, he's going for the splash and dash strategy, unlike Cormac Ryan Meenan, who is the only Porsche on the alternative strategy of doing that half and half fuel load. And it's going to be very, very interesting to see which one comes out on top, because Cormac was ahead of all of the other Porsches. He was in third place. It'll be interesting to see where he comes out towards the end of the race. 21.5 minutes to go here, and the hunt is well and truly on. And James Parker, he can't really do much more than just keep going at the pace he's going. He can't afford to run any quicker than this, I don't think, because if he does, he's just going to endanger himself and risk running out of fuel towards the very end of this race. And I'm going to be very, very curious to know if he can do 80 minutes, if it's possible. I'm going to be very, very interested to know how much fuel that car has at the end of the line.
Well, you told me before we went live today he had 2 liters of fuel, did James Parker, or 2 laps of fuel, did James Parker after Zolder. I reckon that based on that logic, he couldn't possibly make it to the end, but I think he is trying to do so. And we've always known James Parker to be a very fast driver, but the last couple of weeks here on the European Championship, he has shown to be a very patient driver as well. So all credit to him. Going to be very interesting to see how this all shakes out. Cody Pride back on the back of Martin Schumacher for 8th place now. Actually, he's already gotten around him. In fact, has Cody Pride up one more spot now, sets their attention to Mia Rose in the 7th place. Nobody's really fought Cody Pride too hard here as they've come back through the field. Nico Kumpu, who we haven't talked about at all today, is actually going to go wide here, and Banny's going to go around the inside, and just as easy as you please, perhaps, they are still side by side, and now clear is Banny for the position.
We're looking at about 16.8 seconds between the likes of Cody Pride and James Parker. That is the gap between the two of them right now, and Cody Pride has just over 19 minutes to close that gap. Now, obviously there is Mike Noble further ahead, and he would have to get ahead of Mike Noble if he wanted to win the race. But I don't know. I don't know if these BMWs can do this. It's going to be interesting to see. They've clearly got the faith in this car to do it. And I mean, James Parker said to us last week, he said it's the only way the BMW will win around some of these circuits, because it doesn't have the pace at Zolder, Barcelona and Paul Ricard to make the difference. I'm not too sure about Paul Ricard. That enormous Mistral straight, the BMW probably gains an enormous amount of time because of its straight line speed advantage, but I can definitely believe that at Zolder, the only way they were going to win was that no-stop strategy. But here at Barcelona, a very, very different circuit. It's going to be an interesting finish here. Paulo Lima sits in 10th place. I don't think he's going to be 10th for much longer, though, because Killian Ryan Meenan, well, he's effectively already ahead of him in terms of the penalty, but Killian will want to be ahead on track, not just because then he's actually in the top 10, but also because he's got to close down some more cars ahead of him if he's going to make his strategy work here today. Not going to have a look into there. He's getting very, very eager, though, and I would not be surprised if he's going to have a very nice look towards the end of the main straight.
Well, Killian will have remembered what happened to him last week, got a little overzealous in some of the chicanes, turned a few cars, penalties awaited him. Well, it's been clean for him today, and discretion the better part of valor and all that. He will still get the opportunity to overtake down into turn one. I think this is going to be pretty much done and dusted. Paulo Lima fighting him really hard, though, but will have to give up and surrender, and does. Kilian Ryan Meenan back into the top 10. The Side Max driver continues his challenge. Of course, he has to keep it close to Cody Pride. Of course, the next car in line is Martin Schumacher, but still 5 seconds or so up the field in front is Martin Schumacher. Here is Mia Rose. Her campaign today hasn't gone swimmingly, but she just let him go at that point. That was as clean as it could have possibly have been.
I wonder if Mia Rose's thinking is, Cody Pride's going to get past me anyway. I might as well let him go and run my own race and just not waste either of our time. She probably knows she can't beat Cody Pride because he's going about 2 seconds a lap quicker than any of the BMWs at this point in time. There's no way Mia Rose would keep him behind. So why waste the time when you know you're going to finish behind him anyway? Just let him go, let him run his own race, let you continue running your own race. And that's going to be important for Mia Rose because she's going to be one of the BMWs that is going to be looking to go to the end. That was very wide from Cody Pride. That will be an invalidated lap. It'll probably be a warning as well to add to his troubles. Doesn't want to pick up a penalty. A drive-through would ruin his race here.
Of course, Cody Pride not really in what I would consider championship contention, though check back next week. If he wins this race, check back with me next week. I might change my tune, but at least for the moment, not quite in the contention, just racing for the sake of racing. Glad to, I assume, after not being able to race part of last week, he's just happy to be back in the rig, getting used to his new wheel and getting used to racing. He certainly hasn't lost pace. If anything, he's found pace, but very, very quick today and not letting up. He is charging back up through the field. You can see by virtue of a couple of the little mistakes he's made how hard he is driving that Audi to try and get back up through the field. So now up to 7th place, left about 9 seconds now in front of him in the 308, that for 6th place. So a little bit of driving to do. Right, I'm trying to figure out what these Porsches are doing. We think we know what the BMWs are doing. I'm not sure Mike Noble is saving as much as Parker, though I think now they are. But I'm trying to figure out what Baranek, Torvinen, Borvik, even Mia Rose in them, I'm trying to figure out what they're all doing. I don't, there's no way they can make it to the end. So are they going to wait to the last possible second when their fuel tank's empty and then put a little splash in it and go back out? And I'm trying to figure out if that is their strategy. What is the advantage of that? Perhaps just spending less time on pit road, maybe.
I mean, that is the main advantage, isn't it? It's less time static in the pit lane, which that's ideally what you want. You want to be stationary for as little as possible, which is why I was surprised when Cody Pride, Kilian Ryan Meenan, and Cormac Ryan Meenan all went for that half-fuel strategy. And I'm not sure if it's the right play. Maybe, that's why Cody Pride was, it definitely was why Cody Pride was allowed to build such an enormous gap over Mike Noble. Yes, Mike Noble was saving fuel. Mike Noble was also carrying 125 litres on that car. Cody Pride was carrying half. So, definitely a reason why the number one was able to make such an enormous gap early on in the race. And clearly Cody Pride felt that he had to underfuel the car at the start to get away cleanly, and as we see Kilian Ryan Meenan make a move on Martin Schumacher, very nicely done there.
That was slick.
Efficient as well, very, very quick to get past Martin Schumacher. But I think Cody Pride maybe, he did underfuel because he figured if he starts on full fuel and goes for the splash and dash, he probably won't be able to build enough of a gap to be comfortable when it comes to the pit stop. That's probably his line of thinking, I would guess. Of course, we can question him on it post race, but that's the closest thing I can think of right now. And obviously, we don't know the right answer at the moment. You would have to say that Mike Noble is looking the best. Oh, Cody Pride's made a mistake down towards turn 1. He's lost time.
Yeah, Cody Pride making a mistake, getting in there a little too hot, I think, unsettling the car. Take a look here on the replay. Cody Pride enters turn 1. Yeah, just a little too hot. That's what I saw out the window. And, well, you'll know he did that in the sort of the back straight area as well before you go up the hill. Just overcooked it again. We talked about Cody Pride trying to make pace, trying to make time, and that has done nothing to help him catch Leffa in front. In fact, it's stagnant now, and Killian Ryan Meenan is closing in on Mia Rose. No, the little bit of a slide there again. Oh, the tires coming off the Audi perhaps now. We didn't think about that. We're well over the hour mark at this point. Usually you want to change tires in an ideal circumstance every 70 minutes or so, and it has been around that time. Are the tires off? Has the pace and the pressure for Cody Pride worn out the Pirellis on that particular Audi? We'll have to find out. In addition to that, it is coming, the race is coming to Killian Ryan Meenan. It's going away from Cormac Ryan Meenan. 5-second penalty for forceful overtake on the 100 Audi of Mr. Jones. So that 5-second penalty awarded there. And of course, a drive-through, as we mentioned, for the 404 Bar Macho. So that will end whatever strategy he was attempting to play out today. And that will, well, that's deflating indeed, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't mean to burst a bubble of disappointment, but I think the two mistakes that Cody Pride has made, the one he made earlier, where he had to unfortunately give the place back to Lima, that cost him about 3.5 seconds, and the one he's made now that's cost him about 4 seconds on the previous lap. That's 7.5 seconds he's essentially lost.
Well, there they are.
I think that might have just saved the likes of James Parker and Mike Noble if they're not going to pit. So I think at this point in time, Cody Pride has just lost too much time. I could be wrong, but I think at this stage in the race, the fuel load on those BMWs is low enough to the point where the deficit between their lap times is coming down enough to keep them safe. And, well, I think Cody Pride might have blown his chance, but we don't know because...
Yeah, I was going to say, but can the BMWs make it? A lot bigger racetrack than last week. We don't know. We don't. Here's the thing as far as broadcast and commentary goes, folks. So we're going to peek behind the curtain. We don't actually know anything. We just love talking about motorsport, and that's really all it is. We make assumptions based on things that we've seen, but we're never quite sure. One thing I am sure about is that Killian Ryan Meenan is right on the back of Cody Pride. I think the tires on that number one have absolutely gone in the time, and I think you're right as well. I think that might, if James Parker, Mike Noble, and them can make it to the end, that has saved them. I would expect the Porsches in any time now. That all being said, I would have expected them in any time now for the last 30 minutes, and they're still out there, and there's only 9 minutes left. I'm surprised at their fuel economy in those Porsches, and I don't think it's possible, but let's argue for 1 second that Baronet can make it. He's nearly got the 15 seconds in hand, but again, I don't think he can. But if he could, he's nearly got the time to make up for the earlier penalty. Baronet, Noble, Torvinen, Parker, Borovic, Leffa have not pitted in this race yet. Cody Pride and everybody behind has, except Mia Rose and Schumacher, of course. Actually, I think Schumacher did pit, though I'm not entirely sure about that. But either way, 2 different races, 2 different battles going on. Torvinen is very slowly closing in on Mike Noble, but will it matter for anything? We don't know. Kumpu again in a fight this time with IPEC. IPEC trying to get around Kumpu for the 16th place position. Nothing doing there in turns 1 and 2. Oh dear, I don't know what to say. We assume the Porsches are going to run out of fuel. We think the BMWs might be able to make it. on just fumes, and Cody Pride's tires are dead. Killian Ryan Meenan is playing mop-up duty. If none of those cars in front of him can make it, he might be able to get past Cody Pride, win this race. What an incredible race it has been. 80-minute races. I didn't know what to think about them when we dialed them up, but they've been absolutely brilliant.
It's interesting because we know that the BMW couldn't have done 85 minutes at Zolder because James Parker told us they only had two laps left in the tank, and obviously with Zolder being quite a short track, you'd definitely be doing more than 2 laps in 5 minutes. So we know for a fact that 85 is too far a stretch at Zolder for the BMWs. We know that 75 minutes is possible in the Porsche, because that's what we saw Jarkko Torvinen do towards the end of the race, and it looks like 75 minutes is definitely doable here at Barcelona in the Porsche as well. Paulo Lima side by side with Cormac.
This is a fair fight.
Both of these two have 5-second penalties, so it doesn't really matter about the penalties. They just care about finishing ahead of the other. Cormac going to be forced a bit wide, but that'll turn into the inside line for the next corner, and the Porsche will get through, and off goes Cormac. And I don't believe Paulo Lima has stopped yet, has he? No, he hasn't. So Paulo Lima going very long as well. He'll be going for splash and dash, I believe, unless he can get his car to the end of the race. I mean, the one thing we do know is if the Porsches can get to the end, then basically any car can get to the end.
Yeah, I know. I wouldn't have called this with so many people. And we saw people last week, Ryan, run out of fuel on the cooldown lap and coming to get the checkered flag. So we know that fuel was tight, and that's not the most fuel sort of demanding on throttly track is Zolder. So you wouldn't necessarily assume that anyone can make it unless everybody out here was saving, but we know that's not true. We know that Cody Pride hasn't been saving at any point in the race. We know Killian Ryan Meenan hasn't been saving at any point in the race. What about the likes of Baranek, who, by the way, only needs 2 more seconds? If Baranek does make it to the end, he only needs 2 more seconds to defeat the 15-second penalty and win outright. Otherwise, he will finish second in this race, even though he will cross the line first. I am going to predict there's going to be some stranded race cars here in a few moments.
Well, we'll have to find out. I mean, it has gone 75 minutes, and 75 minutes was the endurance stint time that we had for our World Tour. And there was a couple of teams that said that they struggled to hit that 75 minutes. Well, here at Barcelona, which wasn't on the World Tour calendar, by the way, the Porsches managing to do 75 minutes around here, because Romano Baranek is going for another lap. So he's obviously confident that he can keep this car going. I will be amazed if a Porsche can do 80 minutes around here. We were looking at the BMWs as the culprits, but I have to say, if a Porsche goes and does 80 minutes here, then I think every other manufacturer will be scratching their head and saying, why didn't we go for that? But
Battles all over the track.
Romano Baranek might be a surprise winner here tonight, which is definitely not what we expected.
If anybody had Romano Baranek on their bingo card when the night started, I shall be surprised. I from starting where they did
7
to the day that they've had with the penalty and all, I don't think anybody would have called it. Mr. Jones there fighting off Gerardus
it's
in
not
the
over yet,
111.
That's the important thing. It's not over yet. We've still got 3
It
minutes
isn't over.
and 15 seconds left. That's effectively 2 laps. Can Romano Baranek do 2 more laps with this car? And he has to do 2 more laps. He can't afford to ease off the throttle and waste a bunch of time to try and reduce it, because he has a 15-second time penalty. So
I know.
the man has to keep going.
Yeah.
And if he comes into the pit lane, he'll have to serve the penalty. So the splash and dash is almost negated in that sense. He's coming towards the final couple of corners now. Does Romano Berenic peel off into the pit lane? No, he doesn't. He's going to continue going. He can at least make it to the final lap. But will he have enough left in the final lap to complete it? The closing stages of this race, we might have a surprise winner. We were expecting this man to challenge for the win here today. It hasn't quite turned out as so, and, well, if he's not careful, he's going to get mugged by Killian Ryan Meenan, who was 14 seconds down on him.
Nearly losing it. Yeah, this is the battle we thought that was going to be for P1. It turns out it's P7 as it stands. Who would have been able to call this? It's going to be one more lap for everybody on the track. Berenic needs to gain 1.4 seconds in the next 2 laps to win this race outright. Otherwise, by default, Mike Noble's going to win this race. Only 1.2 he needs now in a lap and a half. Otherwise, Mike Noble will win this race, and he will finish second. Will Berenic Torvinen in third. Parker in fourth place, though, challenging Torvinen for that final podium position. Meanwhile, if none of these cars up front can make it, this could be the race for the win. 7th place could be for the win. Cody Pride with no tires.
The fact that none of the Porsches have come in yet, all of the Porsches are still going. I think the Porsches can do it. I think they all know that they can do it, and that's why they've all stayed out.
Absolutely
it would make
incredible.
Sense. Well, here we go. Romano Berenic, he's into the final sector. And if he doesn't come in this lap, he will lead across the line. He's not going to come in this lap. Romano Berenic will start the final lap of the race. The Porsches, well, unless he runs out of fuel on this final lap, they can do 80 minutes at Barcelona. The car that I really didn't think, the car that I thought had the least chances of doing 80 minutes around here, looks like it's going to be the first one to cross the line on a single tank of fuel.
He needs half a second.
He needs half a second in one lap. Can Romano Berenic do it? It's a race against the clock for Romano Berenic to win this race.
Romano Berenic needs half a second for a win in the Euro GT Masters here on RCI. Can he possibly do it? Can Cody Pride hold off Killian Ryan Meenan? 1 lap to go. Nobody coming into the pit lane. Everybody confident they can make it. Literally nobody ducking down the pit lane. 1 car in pit lane, that's Andy Boardman. They've been there for quite some time. Everybody else continuing. The confidence, the fuel mileage, the range. Once again, Ryan Gill proving that we know absolutely nothing about ACC, despite that we're here every single week. I wouldn't have called it. Here's the man, the myth, the legend, the Pirate Racing Sim GT 66 driver, Romano Berenic. Has he got the gap? Has he got the time to win this race outright? No, he doesn't.
But this is it. This is where the Porsche is strong. The final sector, it's nice and twisty. The BMW doesn't like it. The Porsche does like it. The run to the line is short. Is this where Romano Berenic makes his name? He dominated pre-qualifying. He's going to cross the line first. And we wait in bated breath. Cody Pride has been overtaken by Killian. Contact. And
It's a slide. He saved it.
It's a half spin, but Killian saves it. And Mike Noble's coming to the line. Is this going to be who will win? It's 14.
It's Mike Noble!
Seconds. Mike Noble will win, but not because of the one-stop strategy. He'll win due to a 15-second penalty to Romano Berenic. But there's 2 Porsches on the podium in an endurance sprint that you would never have expected them to find themselves here.
Killian gets by for 7th place. Parker 4th in the pit lane. He crosses the line and goes into the pit lane. Borovic can't understate what a day that the 22 had. Top 5 for them. Leffa in 6th place in his Porsche. So many Porsches. 4 inside the top 6 with 2 BMWs. Absolutely incredible stuff. Killian 7th. Pride 8th. Rose inside the top 10 in 9th place after a difficult day. Martin Schumacher hangs on for 10th place. Cormac 11th, Lima 12th, Gerard is 13th, Jones and Banny the top 15. I picked Kumpu, Macha, and Boardman the rest of the field. Well, we filled out the bingo card today. I don't think I would have bet my literal farm on a Porsche not being able to make it to the line in an 80-minute race. Unreal. I'm glad I didn't make that bet now. Mike Noble, though, your winner on penalties.
And
he's out. I think he's out of fuel. I think he's out.
Well,
he is.
Well, there we go. We didn't think the Porsches could make it. They could make it. The BMWs, they also made it. It seems like Killian Ryan-Meenan and Cody Pride only able to get 7th and 8th, and they will be thinking to themselves, if the Porsches made it, surely they could have gone for that strategy. Surely they could have made it as well in a fuel-saving map. And that's going to be something that's kind of left in the thoughts of the 2-3-1 and the number 1 here tonight is, well, and the number 5 with Cormac Ryan-Meenan to a degree. Were they on the right strategy? Well, it doesn't look like it, and that's going to be something they'll have to consider going into next week. But my word, Jesse, we weren't sure if the BMWs would make 80 minutes. Now we've seen the Porsches make 80 minutes at Barcelona. This was the track that was supposed to tell us how Paul Ricard will go in a week's time.
Yeah.
I have no idea what will happen at Paul Ricard in a week's time, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I don't know either. The other thing I was just thinking of, we're sitting here, I'm flabbergasted. I can't think straight, but I'm as giddy as I've ever been because, number one, championship game on between Mike Noble and James Parker. I think that's what we're all here to see, is a championship fight, and we've got 2 titans, 2 heavyweights, 2 pros going at it for that title now, and we get to go to Paul Ricard next week, July 5th. Don't miss it. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, join us next Monday, where there's no way a Porsche goes 80 minutes there.
Well,
there's no way.
Well, we didn't think a Porsche would do 80 minutes here. We had doubts about the BMWs. It turns out both the Porsche and the BMW did 80 minutes here. And we'll have some post-race investigations to do, won't we, Jesse? About how much
I've got a lot of questions.
How much fuel each of those cars had left, and hopefully we can bring you that information next week for Paul Ricard. Round 4 next Monday. Le Castellet, do not miss it. Same time next week. It will be the same duo of myself and Jesse Lee in the commentary box. But, well, my word, that has set up the next week very, very well indeed. And if you are looking forward to more racing, well, there's plenty on offer this week for you here at RCI. The Diamond Drive Cup concludes with round 6 at Monza. It'll be taking a hiatus through the summer, and then on Thursday we have the GT4 Championship. They head out to Mount Panorama. GT4's at Mount Panorama. That's going to be absolutely crazy. Do not miss that, and you'll have Ryan Wilson and Christian Stricker in the box for that one. Then no race on Friday. We're taking a slight break from the Friday Championship, as it did just wrap up last week. But the Night Owl Championship did start last Saturday, and the second round is going to be at Spa as well. And of course, Jesse Lee will be in the box for that one, as he usually is for the Night Owl Championships. And of course, we'll return on Monday, next Monday, 7 days' time. We'll be straight back here for Paul Ricard. A big thank you to Race Department, AK Informatica, Racebase Speed Labs, Driver 61, Sim Racing GP, and Fanatec for making everything here at RCI possible. Obviously, you can check the links for them down in the description and, see what they have to offer. You can probably find something that interests you down there. But from myself, from the stewards today, who've done a fantastic job behind the scenes, and from our broadcaster, Jake Boswell, who's done a fantastic job with the cameras here today, we bid you farewell. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you next week.